My wife claimed she was on a business trip, but she was vacationing with my brother and parents. I found out through her sister's secret social media account. When I checked my airline account, I discovered they used my hard-earned miles. I said nothing and left the house. At the airport, my wife, sister, and parents were furious. You know how some people say hindsight is 20/20? Well, that's complete bullshit. Hindsight is more like looking through a funhouse mirror after someone smashed it with a sledgehammer. Everything's distorted, sharp-edged, and guaranteed to cut you if you get too close. But hell, here I am anyway, picking through the glass. My name's Julian Carter, and up until about 6 months ago, I thought I had this whole life thing figured out. Operations director at Meridian Logistics in Stanford. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who gets a hard-on from spreadsheets and delivery schedules. Sue me. I live by numbers because numbers don't lie. People? Well, that's a different story entirely, but we'll get to that clusterfuck soon enough. Our house in Greenwich was the kind of place you'd see in those real estate porn magazines that rich housewives flip through while waiting for their Botox appointments. You know the type, all clean lines, perfectly staged fruit bowls, and that ridiculous amount of natural light that makes everything look like it's been blessed by God himself. Every Sunday morning, like clockwork, that golden light would stream through our dining room windows and hit the mahogany table just right, turning our breakfast setup into something that belonged on a Hallmark card. I had my routine down to a science. Wake up at 7:15, not 7, not 7:30, but 7:15 because that gave me exactly enough time to shower, throw on my weekend uniform of khakis and a polo, and get the coffee brewing before Lydia made her grand entrance. She always came downstairs at exactly 8:20, hair perfectly tousled in that way that probably took her 45 minutes to achieve, wearing one of those flowy sundresses that cost more than most people's car payments. "Morning, babe," she'd say, floating into the kitchen like some kind of domestic goddess, and I'd hand her that first cup of coffee, cream, no sugar, in the blue ceramic mug she got from that overpriced boutique in Soho. She'd smile, that million-dollar smile that had hooked me 6 years ago at my buddy's wedding. And for those first few minutes of every Sunday, the world felt solid. Predictable. Mine. We'd sit at that perfectly lit table, her scrolling through Instagram while I read the Wall Street Journal on my iPad, and everything would seem absolutely fucking normal. She'd show me pictures of her friends' weekend adventures. Brunches in the Hamptons, charity galas in Manhattan, couples trips to Napa that made my quarterly reports to corporate look like vacation slides. "We should do something like this," she'd say, and I'd nod and make mental notes about booking something similar, because that's what good husbands do, right? They keep their wives happy and their Instagram feeds looking enviable. The Sunday ritual extended beyond our kitchen, of course. There was church, St. Mary's Episcopal, where we had what I now realize was probably the most expensive pew rental in Connecticut. Lydia loved being seen there, loved the way other wives would compliment her outfits and ask where she got her hair done. Me? I went through the motions, stood when everyone stood, sang when everyone sang, and tried not to think about how much the building fund donations were costing me every month. Then there were the dinners with my parents, Harold and Miriam Carter, every other Sunday without fail. My old man's a retired insurance executive who still wears three-piece suits to casual family gatherings, and my mother's one of those women who's turned hospitality into an Olympic sport. Their house in Darien was like a museum of middle-class success. Everything perfectly preserved, nothing out of place, conversations that followed the same predictable script week after week. "How's business, son?" "Good, Dad." The Q3 numbers came in strong. "And Lydia?" "Dear, you look lovely as always." "Oh, Miriam, you're too kind. I love what you've done with the dining room." Rinse, repeat, pass the fucking potatoes. Occasionally, Lydia's younger sister Brielle would grace us with her presence, though grace might be too generous a word. Brielle was 28 going on 16, one of those social media influencers who somehow made a living posting pictures of her lunch and giving unsolicited life advice to her 50,000 followers. She worked for some digital marketing agency in the city, which basically meant she got paid to be professionally vapid on various platforms. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Brielle. She was harmless enough, in that annoying little sister kind of way. Always glued to her phone, always looking for the perfect angle, always turning every family gathering into an impromptu photo shoot. Can we get a group shot by the window? The lighting is amazing, she'd chirp, and we'd all dutifully arrange ourselves like mannequins while she took 47 nearly identical pictures. And that's the thing that really gets me now, looking back through those funhouse mirror shards. We actually looked good together. Really good. Like, magazine spread good. The successful businessman and his beautiful wife, surrounded by loving family, living the American fucking dream in all its wasp-y glory. Our Instagram feed was a carefully curated highlight reel of weekend trips to the Cape, anniversary dinners at restaurants I couldn't pronounce, holiday parties where everyone was attractive and successful, and absolutely no one ever talked about anything real. Brielle made sure of that. She was our unofficial family photographer, always ready with her phone, always knowing exactly how to arrange us for maximum visual impact. Julian turned slightly left. Lydia, tilt your chin up just a tiny bit. Perfect. This is going to get so many likes. And it did. Every post, every story, every carefully crafted moment of our supposedly perfect life got hundreds of hearts and fire emojis and comments from people telling us how lucky we were, how beautiful we looked, how they wanted what we had. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife, isn't it? All those people envying our picture-perfect existence while I'm standing there like a fucking moron, completely oblivious to the fact that I was living in a house of cards built on quicksand during an earthquake. But that's the thing about lies. The good ones, the really insidious ones, they don't announce themselves with dramatic music and flashing neon signs. They slip into your life wearing the face of everything you think you want, and they make themselves so comfortable that you start to believe they belong there. They become your normal, your routine, your Sunday morning ritual of coffee and smiles and perfectly filtered photographs. I used to think Sundays meant peace. I used to think consistency was the same thing as happiness. I used to think that if something looked right from the outside, it probably was right on the inside too. I used to think a lot of stupid shit, actually, but Sunday mornings were the worst because that's when I felt most secure in my delusions. The light would fall across our dining table in exactly the same warm way every week. Lydia would smile like everything was normal, and I'd sit there in my khakis and polo thinking I was the luckiest bastard in Connecticut. I had no idea that while I was busy scheduling my life down to the minute, other people were scheduling theirs around mine. I had no idea that my perfectly curated existence was actually just the set piece for someone else's drama. I learned too late that pictures tell stories. All right, just not the ones you think you're telling. They tell stories about who's missing from the frame, about what happened in the 60 seconds before the shutter clicked, about the conversations that got cut short when someone said, "Wait, let me get my phone." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, in this moment I'm remembering, I'm still the guy who thinks Sunday mornings are about peace and coffee and the comfortable weight of routine. I'm still Julian Carter, operations director, devoted husband, dutiful son, the man with the plan who's got everything under control. What a fucking joke that turned out to be. You ever notice how the biggest lies always start with the smallest details? Like how someone who's about to screw you over will suddenly become really interested in making sure their story has all the right props and background music? Yeah, well, welcome to my crash course in Advanced Bullshit Detection 101, taught by the people I trusted most. It was a Tuesday morning in October, one of those crisp Connecticut days where the leaves are just starting to turn, and every basic white girl in Greenwich is posting pumpkin spice latte photos like she's discovered fire. I was sitting at our kitchen island, working my way through quarterly shipping reports and trying to figure out why our Newark distribution center was hemorrhaging money, when Lydia came bouncing down the stairs like she'd just won the fucking lottery. Now, Lydia's not a bouncer by nature. She's more of a glider. You know, one of those women who moves through life like she's perpetually walking down a runway, all smooth grace and calculated elegance. So when she came bouncing, actually bouncing, down those stairs at 7:30 in the morning with her hair still messy and wearing nothing but one of my old Yale t-shirts, my first thought wasn't, how delightful. It was more along the lines of, what the hell is happening here? Julian, baby, you're not going to believe this. She was practically vibrating with excitement, waving her iPhone around like it contained the secrets of the universe. I just got the most amazing opportunity. I looked up from my laptop, already feeling that familiar knot forming in my stomach. You know, The one that shows up whenever someone starts a conversation with, "You're not going to believe this," because, spoiler alert, you're usually not going to want to believe it either. What kind of opportunity? I asked, closing the laptop because I could already tell this was going to require my full attention. A client. Well, a potential client. Wants to fly me out to Honolulu for a consultation. Like, immediately. Isn't that incredible? She shoved the phone in my face, showing me what looked like a legitimate business email with all the right logos and letterheads. They're launching this new luxury resort, and they specifically requested me after seeing my portfolio. They want to discuss a full branding package. Here's the thing about being married to someone for 6 years. You learn to read their tells. And Lydia had more tells than a poker player with Parkinson's. When she was genuinely excited about work, she'd start talking faster and gesturing with her hands. When she was nervous, she'd fidget with her wedding ring. When she was lying, she'd over-explain everything and make way too much eye contact, like she was trying to hypnotize me into believing her bullshit. Guess which category this fell into? That's great, babe, I said slowly. But don't you usually have more lead time for these kinds of things? I mean, flying to Hawaii for a consultation seems like something you'd plan more than. I glanced at the timestamp on the email, 12 hours in advance. I know, right? That's what makes it so exciting. They had a last-minute opening, and apparently their first choice fell through. It's like fate. She was practically glowing now, and I have to admit, part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to be the supportive husband who got excited about his wife's career opportunities, even if they did involve flying halfway across the Pacific on less than a day's notice. But here's what didn't make sense. Lydia worked for a boutique branding firm in White Plains that specialized in local businesses, restaurants, med spas, the occasional tech startup. Their biggest client was a chain of yoga studios in Westchester. They weren't the kind of agency that luxury Hawaiian resorts just happened to stumble across while browsing the internet for marketing talent. Who's the client? I asked. Kealani Resort Group, she said without missing a beat. They're developing this incredible property on the North Shore. Ultra-luxury, eco-friendly, targeting high-net-worth individuals who want an authentic Hawaiian experience. I nodded like this made perfect sense, while my brain started running through all the reasons it absolutely didn't. But what was I going to do? Interrogate my wife like she was trying to embezzle company funds? Tell her I didn't trust her judgment? Demand to see her browser history? When do you leave? I asked instead. Tonight. Can you believe it? I need to pack and get to JFK by 6 for an 8 o'clock flight. She was already heading toward the stairs, then stopped and spun around. You don't mind, do you? I know it's sudden, but this could be huge for my career. Like, career-defining huge. And there it was, the guilt trip disguised as consideration. The implication that if I had any objections to my wife flying to paradise on 12 hours' notice, I was obviously a controlling asshole who didn't support her professional ambitions. Of course I don't mind. I lied, because that's what you do when you're married. You swallow your instincts and trust the person you promised to love and honor and all that other shit that sounds so much easier in theory than in practice. Go for it. She beamed at me like I'd just told her she won the Nobel Prize for marketing excellence, kissed me on the forehead, and disappeared upstairs to pack. And that's when the real show began. Now, Lydia's normally a meticulous packer. She'll spend an hour debating between two nearly identical black blazers and create detailed outfits for every possible scenario, complete with backup accessories and weather contingencies. She travels with enough skincare products to stock a Sephora and at least 3 pairs of shoes for every day she's planning to be gone. But that morning she threw clothes into a suitcase like the house was on fire. I could hear her upstairs, opening and slamming drawers, muttering to herself, and generally creating the kind of chaos that usually preceded family emergencies or natural disasters. Need any help? I called up the stairs. No, I'm good. Almost done. Almost done turned into an hour and a half of frantic packing, followed by another half hour of her standing in our bedroom doorway with 2 suitcases, a small carry-on, and a much larger checked bag, looking like she was about to move to Hawaii permanently rather than attend a 3-day business consultation. Babe, I said, eyeing the luggage situation, how many outfit changes does this consultation require? She laughed, but it sounded forced. You know how it is with new clients. First impressions are everything. and I want to be prepared for any situation. Business meetings, client dinners, maybe some informal socializing. Right. Because nothing says serious business consultation like packing enough clothes for a 2-week vacation. But here's where it gets really interesting. While Lydia was upstairs having her packing meltdown, I started noticing other weird shit happening around me. My phone kept buzzing with texts, but not the usual stuff. Not work emergencies, or my mother asking if we were coming to Sunday dinner. These were different. Evasive. My brother Aaron, who normally called me at least twice a week to complain about his job or ask for advice or just shoot the shit, had suddenly gone radio silent. When I tried calling him the night before, it went straight to voicemail. When I texted him that morning asking if he wanted to grab drinks while Lydia was out of town, I got back a weirdly formal response about being tied up with work stuff, and maybe next week. Aaron works in sales for a medical device company. He's never been tied up with work stuff for more than 5 minutes in his entire life. Then there were my parents. Harold and Miriam Carter, creatures of habit, so predictable you could set your watch by their routines, suddenly didn't want to talk about Sunday dinner. When I called my mother the day before to confirm our usual plans, she'd been oddly distant. "Oh, darling, didn't we mention? Your father and I are going out of town this weekend. Just a quick little getaway." "Where are you going?" "Oh, just away. We'll call you when we get back." My mother has never in her life been vague about travel plans. This is a woman who will spend 20 minutes describing her grocery store route and which checkout line moved fastest. But suddenly she's being mysterious about a weekend trip? And then there was the timing. Lydia's last-minute business trip. Aaron's sudden unavailability. My parents' mysterious getaway. All happening in the same week. All announced with the same breathless urgency. All involving people who normally couldn't coordinate a pizza order without 3 planning meetings and a shared Google Calendar. But you know what I did with all these red flags? I ignored them. Because that's what you do when you're living in a perfectly curated life that you've spent 6 years building. You don't go looking for problems. You don't assume the worst about the people you love. You give them the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt is starting to feel heavier than the benefit. So I kissed my wife goodbye at the door, helped her load those suspiciously overpacked suitcases into her Audi, and waved as she drove off toward JFK and her career-defining opportunity in paradise. And then I went inside and tried to convince myself that the sick feeling in my stomach was just because I was going to miss her, not because I was pretty sure I'd just been played by a master class in collaborative deception. You know what they say about curiosity and cats? Well, turns out that old saying is complete horseshit. Sometimes curiosity doesn't kill you. Sometimes it just shows you that you were already dead and too stupid to notice. But I'm getting ahead of myself again, because at this point in the story, I still thought I was just being a concerned husband with a perfectly reasonable case of the jitters. It was Thursday night, 2 days after Lydia's dramatic departure for Hawaii, and I was sitting in my home office pretending to review budget projections while actually obsessing over the fact that my wife hadn't called. Not once. Sure, she'd sent a few texts, landed safely, and hotel is nice, Wi-Fi sucks, and client meeting went well, exhausted. But no actual phone calls. No video chats. No, "I miss you, honey," conversations that used to be standard operating procedure whenever she traveled. Which, let's be honest, wasn't that often. Lydia's idea of business travel usually involved day trips to Manhattan or maybe an overnight in Boston. Hawaii was definitely outside her normal corporate radius. But then again, crisis management probably came with a different set of rules. That's when I made the mistake that changed everything. Or maybe it was the smartest thing I'd ever done. Jury's still out on that one. I decided to check Instagram. Not Lydia's account. I already followed her there, and she'd posted exactly what I expected. A carefully curated shot of a hotel room with some generic caption about working hard in paradise and a sunset photo tag from Waikiki Beach. Standard influencer wife bullshit, nothing suspicious about it. No, I went looking for Brielle's account. Because if anyone was going to be documenting every moment of their life on social media, it was my sister-in-law. The girl couldn't eat a sandwich without posting it to her story with some inspirational quote about nourishing your soul or embracing authentic moments. Brielle's main account was exactly what you'd expect. A perfectly curated grid of aesthetic breakfast bowls, motivational quotes over sunset backgrounds, and professionally lit selfies that probably took 47 attempts to get right. Her bio read something nauseating like, "Digital storyteller Sparkles, spreading positivity Sparkles, living authentically Sparkles," with a link to her latest blog post about sustainable fashion or mindful living or whatever buzzword was trending that week. But here's the thing about social media. The real stuff, the actually interesting stuff, never makes it to the main feed. That's all performance art designed to sell you something, whether it's a product or an image or a version of life that doesn't actually exist. The real stories live in the margins, in the tagged photos you didn't know existed, in the reflections caught in windows, in the split-second moments between poses when people forget they're being watched. So I started digging. Not stalking. Let's call it investigative scrolling. I clicked on every tagged photo, followed every location tag, checked every story highlight going back months. Most of it was exactly the mind-numbing content you'd expect from someone whose job was being professionally enthusiastic about nothing in particular. But then I found something weird. It was buried in the location tags from a coffee shop in Soho, hidden in a group photo from some marketing event last month. Brielle was tagged in the background, but when I clicked on her username, it didn't take me to her main account. It took me somewhere else entirely. A second account. Private, of course, but linked to what looked like a throwaway Gmail address with a string of numbers that meant nothing to anyone who wasn't supposed to find it. The username was just Brie_behind_the_scenes, with no profile picture and a follower count of exactly 17 people. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and apparently, I was more desperate than I'd realized. I created a fake account, some generic male name, stock photo profile picture, bland bio about loving travel and photography. The kind of completely forgettable presence that might reasonably follow a social media person's secondary account. I sent a follow request and waited. 2 hours later, she accepted. What I found behind that digital door was like stepping into an alternate universe where everything I thought I knew about my family was just the opening act for a much more interesting show. This wasn't Brielle's professional persona with the perfect lighting and inspirational captions. This was raw, unfiltered, real, or at least as real as someone like Brielle was capable of being. The content was completely different. Instead of artfully arranged smoothie bowls, there were messy hotel rooms and candid group photos. Instead of motivational quotes, there were inside jokes and complaint sessions about clients and sarcastic commentary about the performance of perfection. It felt like looking through a window into someone's actual life instead of their highlight reel. And there, scattered throughout the recent stories like breadcrumbs leading to a very specific gingerbread house, were palm trees, white sand beaches, crystal clear water that was definitely not the murky gray Atlantic I was used to seeing on our occasional trips to the Hamptons. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. Maybe Brielle was on vacation too. Maybe everyone in my family had simultaneously decided that November was the perfect time to escape to tropical paradise. Maybe I was the only idiot in Connecticut still dealing with 40-degree weather and budget projections. But then I saw the reflection. It was in a story that lasted exactly 3 seconds. Just a quick boomerang of someone clinking champagne glasses together in what looked like a restaurant overlooking the ocean. The kind of throwaway content that most people would scroll past without a second thought. But I wasn't most people anymore. I was a man whose wife had disappeared into thin air with a suspicious amount of luggage and a story that was starting to smell fishier than week-old sushi. I watched that 3-second loop over and over, frame by frame, until my eyes burned and my phone battery started dying. And there, caught in the reflection of the restaurant's window behind the champagne glasses, was a profile I would have recognized anywhere. My brother Aaron's profile. Unmistakably him. With that stupid goatee he'd been growing for the past month and the backward baseball cap, he wore everywhere like he was still 22 and trying to get into college parties. Aaron, who had been asking me about sunscreen brands and Hawaiian weather forecasts just 3 days ago. Aaron, who was supposed to be in his shitty studio apartment in Stamford, probably eating cereal for dinner and playing video games until 3 in the morning. Aaron, who was apparently sipping champagne at sunset in what looked suspiciously like the same tropical paradise where my wife was allegedly managing someone else's corporate crisis. I screenshotted that story so fast I almost dropped my phone. But wait, it gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. The next story in Brielle's secret feed was another throwaway moment. Someone adjusting their hat, at what looked like a poolside cabana. Again, just a few seconds of meaningless content that most people would ignore. But I was past the point of ignoring anything. The hat was straw, wide-brimmed, with a navy blue ribbon around the crown. I'd bought that exact hat for my mother last Christmas, from some boutique in Greenwich that charged $200 for what was essentially overpriced beachwear. Miriam had loved it, worn it to every outdoor event since then, always made sure to mention where it came from when other women complimented it. "Julian got this for me," she'd say, adjusting the brim with that proud maternal smile. "Isn't he thoughtful? So thoughtful that apparently I'd funded my own mother's participation in whatever the fuck this was turning out to be." The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a group boomerang, 4 champagne flutes clinking together in slow motion, the kind of celebratory toast you make when something significant has just happened. 4 hands holding 4 glasses, and I studied those hands like I was preparing for the world's most fucked up anatomy exam. One hand had perfectly manicured nails in a shade of coral that Lydia had been obsessing over for the past month. Another hand wore my mother's wedding ring, that distinctive platinum band with the small diamond cluster that had belonged to my grandmother. The third hand was obviously masculine, wearing what looked like a class ring, or maybe. Wait, I zoomed in until the image pixelated, but I could still make out the details. It wasn't a class ring. It was my father's signet ring, the one with his initials engraved in Old English script that he'd inherited from his own father and wore every day since I was a kid. For hands. For glasses. For people who were supposed to be in 4 different places, living 4 separate lives, none of which involved tropical vacations and champagne toasts, while I sat in Connecticut like the world's biggest asshole, worried about budget projections and quarterly reports. I watched that boomerang until my screen went black from inactivity. Then I plugged my phone back in and watched it again, and again, and again, until the repetitive motion of those clinking glasses started to feel like a metronome counting down to the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. The worst part? They looked happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way that none of them ever looked during our perfectly staged family gatherings back home. No forced smiles, no performative conversation, no carefully orchestrated photo ops for Instagram. Just 4 people enjoying themselves without me, having the kind of authentic good time that apparently required my complete absence to achieve. That's when I realized I wasn't looking at evidence of 4 separate betrayals. I was looking at evidence of one very carefully coordinated family vacation that somehow forgot to include the family member who'd been paying for everyone else's good times for the past 6 years. Ever have one of those moments where you suddenly understand why people lose their shit and start throwing things? Not that I'm a violent guy. Hell, the most aggressive thing I'd done in years was argue with a customer service rep about an incorrect delivery charge. But sitting there staring at my phone screen, watching my entire family toast their secret vacation with champagne I'd probably paid for, I finally got it. I understood the appeal of breaking something expensive just to hear the sound it makes when it shatters. Instead, I did what any rational, methodical, completely fucking furious operations director would do. I opened my laptop and started auditing my accounts. You see, there's one thing about being married to someone for 6 years while maintaining separate finances for independence. You tend to get a little sloppy about certain shared resources. Credit cards with authorized users. Joint access to airline accounts. Login information saved on shared devices for convenience. The kind of digital intimacy that seems romantic when you trust someone and absolutely insane when you realize that trust was misplaced. I started with American Airlines, mostly because I'm a creature of habit and they've been my carrier of choice since college. 10 years of business travel, delayed flights, middle seats between crying babies, and guys who think airplane armrests are suggestions rather than territorial boundaries. 10 years of accumulating miles the hard way, one miserable cross-country red-eye at a time. My AAdvantage account was my quiet pride and joy, my digital trophy case full of status levels and upgrade certificates, and enough banked miles to fly first class to Tokyo if I ever decided to stop being practical and start being spontaneous. Executive Platinum status, earned through countless hours in airport lounges and rental car lines and hotel check-ins that all blurred together into one long business trip punctuated by brief returns home. I logged into the account expecting to see my usual balance, somewhere around 340,000 miles, give or take a few thousand depending on recent credit card spending and quarterly bonuses. Enough for a really nice vacation, maybe two decent ones, or several years' worth of domestic upgrades that made business travel slightly less soul-crushing. What I found instead was a balance of 47,000 miles and a transaction history that read like a fucking crime scene. 4 first-class tickets to Honolulu, booked 6 days ago. Departure date: the same Tuesday that Lydia had her emergency client crisis. Total cost in miles: 280,000, plus taxes and fees charged to the credit card linked to the account. My credit card, obviously, because whose else would it be? The names on the reservations were masked for privacy, just initials and partial last names. But the booking details were clear as day. 4 seats in first class on the same flight, same departure time, same destination. For people traveling together on my miles, my status, my 10 years of accumulated suffering through airline food and recycled airplane air. I sat there staring at the screen for a full minute, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. It wasn't just the betrayal, though that was certainly enough to send me into a homicidal rage. It was the sheer fucking audacity of it. The casual assumption that my miles were somehow community property, available for anyone in my family to use whenever they felt like taking a group vacation without me. But wait, there's more. Because apparently one coordinated act of theft wasn't enough for these people. I clicked through to the detailed transaction history and found the digital fingerprints of their planning. The tickets had been booked from my home IP address, using my stored payment information, with my TSA pre-check number for expedited security. Someone had logged into my account, browsed available flights, selected premium seats, and charged the whole thing to my card, all from the comfort of what I'd assumed was our shared home computer. The booking confirmation had been sent to my email address, then immediately deleted. I only found it because I'm compulsive about checking my trash folder, a holdover from my logistics work where deleted emails sometimes contain the only proof of why something went wrong. There it was, buried between spam messages and automated notifications. Confirmation for your American Airlines reservation. Your reservation. My reservation. The reservation I'd never made for the trip I'd never planned to the destination where I wasn't welcome. I called American Airlines customer service, because that's what you do when your account has been compromised and your entire family has stolen your miles. I expected to wait on hold for 45 minutes listening to terrible jazz music, but apparently Executive Platinum members get expedited service, even when they're calling to report that their wives are thieves. American Airlines, this is Paula. How can I help you today? Paula Kim, according to her professional introduction, supervisor in the A-Advantage customer service department, probably sitting in some call center in Texas or Arizona, dealing with entitled frequent flyers who think their status makes them royalty. I almost felt bad for what I was about to dump in her lap. Hi Paula, this is Julian Carter, account number. I rattled off my membership details, my voice surprisingly calm considering I felt like my chest was full of broken glass. I'm calling about some recent activity on my account that I didn't authorize. I'd be happy to help you with that, Mr. Carter. Let me pull up your account. Okay, I can see you're Executive Platinum. Thank you for your loyalty. What specific activity are you concerned about? 4 first-class tickets to Honolulu, booked on November 12th. I didn't book those tickets. I'm not traveling to Hawaii, and I need to understand how someone else was able to access my account and use my miles. Pause. The sound of typing, probably Paula pulling up the transaction details while trying to figure out whether she was dealing with a fraud case or a domestic dispute. Smart money was probably on domestic dispute, given the circumstances. Mr. Carter, I can see those reservations were booked from your registered IP address using your stored payment method. The system shows successful authentication with your username and password. Are you saying someone else had access to your login credentials? That's exactly what I'm saying. My wife had access to the account for legitimate reasons, shared travel planning, that sort of thing. But I never authorized her to book 4 tickets for other people using my miles. More typing, more pausing. Paula was probably consulting a supervisor or checking some internal protocol for handling family drama disguised as fraud reports. I understand your concern, Mr. Carter. Let me ask you a few verification questions to make sure I'm speaking with the account holder. Can you confirm the last 4 digits of the credit card on file? I answered her questions, all of them. proving that I was indeed Julian Carter and not some random guy trying to fuck with someone else's frequent flyer account. Social security number, previous travel history, the hotel preference saved in my profile. All the digital breadcrumbs that proved I was the rightful owner of miles that had apparently become community property without my consent. Okay, Mr. Carter, I've verified your identity. Looking at the booking details, I can confirm that 4 first-class reservations were made using your miles and charged to your credit card. The reservations are still active. The passengers haven't traveled yet. Good. I want to cancel those reservations and get my miles back. I can certainly help you with that, but I need to let you know that these are non-refundable fares. If you cancel now, there will be penalties, and you'll only recover a portion of the miles used. Non-refundable fares. Of course they were. Because why would my family steal my miles for refundable tickets when they could steal them for premium seats that locked me into their financial impact whether I liked it or not? What about changing the reservations? Could I, for example, change the names on the tickets? No, sir. Airline policy doesn't allow name changes on purchased tickets. However, I can see that the reservations were made using your platinum status for priority boarding and seat selection. Would you like me to add a note to your account requiring in-person verification for future bookings? In-person verification. The airline equivalent of telling your bank to call you before anyone uses your credit card. Humiliating, but necessary when your own family has apparently decided that your resources are theirs to distribute as they see fit. Yes, please add that note. And Paula, I want documentation of this entire transaction history. Email me everything. Booking details, IP addresses, timestamps, credit card charges. I want a complete record of how my account was accessed and used without my permission. Absolutely, Mr. Carter. I'll send you a detailed account activity report within the next hour. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes. The people traveling on these reservations, when they check in, when they go through security, when they board the plane, they're using my status benefits, right? My priority boarding, my seat upgrades, my baggage allowances? That's correct, sir. The reservations were made using your A Advantage number, so all associated benefits would apply to those passengers. And if I were to, hypothetically, have concerns about unauthorized use of my account, could you flag these specific reservations for additional verification at check-in? Another pause. Paula was definitely consulting someone now, probably wondering how much drama one frequent flyer account could generate. Mr. Carter, I can add a security note to your account requesting verification of the primary account holder for any future travel. For existing reservations, passengers would need to present valid identification matching the names on the tickets, but that's standard procedure anyway. Not quite what I was hoping for, but better than nothing. At least there would be a paper trail, documentation that someone had accessed my account without permission and used my accumulated miles for their secret family vacation. Perfect. Add that security note. Send me the documentation, and Paula, thank you for being so professional about what I'm sure seems like a pretty fucked up situation. You're very welcome, Mr. Carter. We appreciate your business and your loyalty to American Airlines. After I hung up, I sat in my office staring at my laptop screen, watching my miles balance sit there like a monument to my own stupidity. 47,000 miles. Enough for a domestic first-class ticket, maybe a coach seat to Europe if I was willing to deal with a few connections. Not enough for the kind of trip my family was apparently taking with money that used to be mine. The email from Paula arrived 37 minutes later, complete with booking confirmations, transaction histories, and IP logs that painted a clear picture of exactly how thoroughly I'd been played. For first-class seats, for people who were supposed to be somewhere else, and one husband sitting in Connecticut finally understanding that his marriage wasn't the only lie he'd been living. There's something weirdly liberating about discovering that your entire life is a lie. Not the discovery part. That fucking sucks. But what comes after? That moment when you realize you don't have to play by the rules of a game that was rigged against you from the start. When you understand that the people you've been protecting don't deserve your protection, and the responsibilities you've been shouldering were never actually yours to carry. I didn't sleep Thursday night. Not even a little bit. Instead, I sat in my home office with a legal pad, 3 different laptops, and the kind of cold, calculating focus that usually made my colleagues at Meridian Logistics nervous during budget meetings. Except this time, instead of optimizing supply chains and delivery schedules, I was systematically dismantling the financial infrastructure that had been supporting everyone else's good time at my expense. You want to know the difference between anger and rage? Anger makes you want to break things. Rage makes you want to build things. Specifically, walls that are tall enough and thick enough to keep the people who hurt you from ever being able to hurt you again. I started with the joint checking account, the one Lydia and I had set up 3 years ago for household expenses and shared financial goals. In theory, it was supposed to make our marriage more collaborative. In practice, it had turned into a slush fund that she used for whatever the hell she wanted while I dutifully transferred money from my primary account every month like some kind of automated ATM. The balance was $47,000, accumulated over years of my contributions and very few actual household expenses. $47,000 that was technically ours, but had been funded entirely by me, sitting there like a big red emergency button waiting for someone to push it. So I pushed it. Electronic transfer to my individual checking account, authorized by my username and password, completely legal and absolutely final. The joint account went from a healthy 5-figure balance to exactly $0.00 in the time it took me to type in my routing numbers. Next up were the credit cards. We had 3 shared accounts, American Express, Visa, and a MasterCard from our local credit union that offered better interest rates on large purchases. All 3 had Lydia listed as an authorized user, which had seemed like such a reasonable arrangement when we were young and stupid and thought love meant sharing everything. I called each company's customer service line, navigated through their automated phone trees like I was running an obstacle course, and systematically removed her authorization from every account. The Amex representative tried to talk me out of it, explaining that authorized users often need access for emergency situations and family convenience. "Ma'am," I said to the customer service rep, who was probably reading from a script designed to prevent messy domestic disputes from becoming billing nightmares. "The emergency situation is that my authorized user is currently in Hawaii, using my miles and my money without my permission. The family convenience she needs is to learn how to pay for her own fucking vacations. Authorized user privileges revoked. Account access terminated. New cards issued with different numbers, which would make any saved payment information completely useless. But credit cards were just the appetizer. The main course was our investment accounts, the retirement funds, the carefully constructed financial portfolio that I'd been building since my first job out of college. Most of it was in my name anyway, but there were beneficiary designations, joint ownership agreements, and various legal documents that gave Lydia access to my money in case I got hit by a bus or had a heart attack during a particularly stressful quarterly review. I'd always thought of those documents as romantic gestures, proof that I trusted her with my financial future. Now they felt more like suicide notes I'd written while drunk on the idea that marriage meant permanent loyalty. Time to sober up. I updated every beneficiary designation, changed every access authorization, and revoked every financial power of attorney that had Lydia's name on it. My retirement accounts, my investment portfolio, my life insurance policy, all of it locked down tighter than a Swiss bank account, accessible only by me or the lawyers I hadn't hired yet, but probably would need soon. The house was trickier because we both had our names on the deed and the mortgage. I couldn't just lock her out of property she technically co-owned, but I could make some adjustments to ensure that I'd know if she tried to come back while I wasn't home. Smart locks are beautiful things when you're married to someone you trust. They're even more beautiful when you're married to someone you don't. I changed all the entry codes and set up notifications that would ping my phone every time a door opened or closed. I installed security cameras at every entrance, configured to record both video and audio, because if my wife and my family wanted to have dramatic confrontations in my driveway, I figured I might as well have evidence of whatever they said. Then I called Noah Burke. Noah's the kind of lawyer you hope you never need, but you're grateful as hell to have when your life goes sideways. Family law, divorce proceedings, asset protection, all the legal specialties that help people pick up the pieces when love turns into warfare. I'd met him at a charity golf tournament 5 years ago, back when I thought lawyers were just people who made simple things complicated for billable hours. Turns out, lawyers are people who make complicated things simple when everyone else is trying to fuck you over. "Julian," Noah said when I called his direct line at 11:30 p.m., because apparently successful divorce attorneys don't keep normal business hours. This is either very good news or very bad news. And given that you're calling me at midnight on a Thursday, I'm guessing it's not good news. Noah, I need an emergency consultation. How quickly can you see me? How emergency are we talking? Like, someone's threatening you emergency, or someone's threatening your bank account emergency? Someone already robbed my bank account, stole my airline miles, and is currently drinking champagne in Hawaii with my brother and my parents while lying to me about a business trip. Pause. The sound of Noah probably reaching for a legal pad and a very strong cup of coffee, because this was clearly going to be one of those conversations that required documentation and caffeine. Jesus Christ, Julian. Okay, I can see you first thing tomorrow morning. But let me ask you something right now. Have you done anything stupid yet? Sent angry texts, confronted anyone, made any financial moves that could be construed as vindictive? I moved money from our joint account to my individual account, canceled her authorized user status on my credit cards, and updated my beneficiary designations. All legal, all within my rights as the account holder. Good. Smart. Keep doing smart things and stop doing anything that could be interpreted as emotional retaliation. What else do you have? I told him about the Instagram evidence, the airline records, the documentation Paula had sent me from American Airlines. I told him about the lies, the coordination, the months of weird behavior that suddenly made perfect sense when viewed through the lens of a family conspiracy. Julian, listen to me very carefully. This is not just a cheating spouse situation. This is systematic financial abuse combined with coordinated deception involving multiple family members. You're going to need 3 things: a clean financial perimeter, neutral witnesses, and your restraint. I can give you the first 2. The third one might be negotiable. The third one is non-negotiable. You stay calm, you stay smart, and you let me handle the legal strategy. Can you do that? I thought about my wife laughing in some Hawaiian restaurant, toasting her successful deception with champagne I'd paid for. I thought about my brother asking me about sunscreen while planning to steal my vacation. I thought about my parents, who'd raised me to believe that family loyalty was sacred, teaching me that lesson right up until the moment they decided I wasn't family enough to include in their tropical getaway. Yeah, Noah, I can stay calm. But I want them to understand that calm doesn't mean weak, and smart doesn't mean forgiving. Understood. I'll see you at 8 a.m. sharp, and Julian, bring everything. Every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence you've collected. We're going to build a case that's so airtight they'll need a fucking submarine to find a way out of it. After I hung up with Noah, I sat back in my desk chair and looked around my home office. My space, my sanctuary, the room where I'd spent countless hours building the career that funded everyone else's dreams. The degrees on the wall, the industry awards, the family photos that suddenly looked like evidence of crimes I'd been too trusting to recognize. I took down the photo of Lydia and me from our anniversary dinner last year, the one where we're both smiling like we're the happiest people in the world. I studied it for a moment, trying to remember what it felt like to believe that smile was real, then slid it face down into my desk drawer next to the airline documentation. Some things are worth preserving for evidence. Some things are worth preserving for memory. Most things, it turns out, are worth preserving for neither. You know what they don't tell you about planning revenge? It's actually a lot like planning a wedding, except instead of coordinating flowers and photographers, you're coordinating lawyers and witnesses, and the perfect moment to watch someone's face realize their whole world just went to shit. The attention to detail is remarkably similar, though the guest list is significantly more hostile. I spent Friday morning in Noah Burke's office, which looked exactly like what Central Casting would order if they needed a set for successful divorce attorney. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound law books that probably cost more than most people's cars, and diplomas from impressive universities arranged just so behind his desk. Noah himself was mid-50s, silver-haired, and had the kind of calm confidence that comes from watching hundreds of marriages explode and knowing exactly how to sweep up the debris. Julian, he said after reviewing my documentation for the 3rd time, this is either the most clear-cut case of financial infidelity I've seen in 20 years, or your wife is significantly smarter than her Instagram account suggests. What do you mean? I mean she's left a digital paper trail that a first-year law student could follow. The airline records, the social media evidence, the credit card charges. It's like she wanted to get caught. Either she's incredibly sloppy, or this is some kind of elaborate setup. I thought about that for a moment, running through the timeline in my head. Lydia wasn't stupid, manipulative, sure, and apparently a pathological liar, but not stupid. So why had she been so careless about covering her tracks? Maybe she thought I was too trusting to look. Or maybe she thought you were too weak to do anything about it, even if you found out. Noah leaned back in his leather chair, studying me with the kind of professional assessment that probably cost $300 an hour. The question is, what do you want the outcome to be? I want them to understand that actions have consequences. I want them to face the truth in public, without being able to spin it or lie their way out of it. And I want to make sure this never happens to me again. Noah nodded, making notes on his legal pad. Achievable goals. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to let them come home. Let them think they got away with it. Let them settle back into their normal routines and start planning their next deception. That sounds like letting them win. That sounds like giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Julian, right now you have evidence of a secret vacation and some suspicious financial activity. What you don't have is evidence of how they're going to handle the aftermath. Are they going to lie to your face? Are they going to gaslight you? Are they going to try to make you think you're crazy for being suspicious? I could see where he was going with this. The crime was bad, but the cover-up would be worse. And the cover-up would happen in real time, in front of witnesses, with no plausible deniability. You want me to give them a chance to lie to me. I want you to give them a chance to lie to everyone. Because here's the thing about liars, Julian, they can't help themselves. They'll double down, they'll elaborate, they'll add details that contradict their previous stories. And they'll do it in front of people who matter. That's when Noah outlined what he called the welcome committee strategy. Instead of confronting them privately, where they could control the narrative and minimize the damage, we were going to arrange a very public homecoming. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just public. With witnesses who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. We need 3 types of people, Noah explained, ticking them off on his fingers. Professional contacts who can document their behavior, personal contacts who can attest to your character, and neutral parties who have no investment in protecting anyone's reputation. For the professional contacts, he suggested I reach out to Paula Kim at American Airlines, the customer service supervisor who'd helped me document the unauthorized use of my miles. She'd already expressed concerns about the account security issues, and Noah thought she might be willing to verify the booking details in person if we could arrange it. Airlines take fraud seriously, he said. If we can get her to flag the reservations for additional verification at arrival, it creates an official paper trail and puts your family in the position of having to explain why they're traveling on tickets they didn't pay for. For the personal contacts, Noah suggested I involve someone from our church, someone who knew all of us and could witness whatever story they tried to tell about their vacation. Reverend Thomas Avery was the obvious choice. He'd known my family for years, had counseled us through various minor crises, and had the kind of moral authority that made lying to him particularly uncomfortable. Religious leaders make excellent witnesses, Noah noted. They're trained to recognize deception, they're credible in legal proceedings, and most people find it psychologically difficult to lie directly to clergy. For the neutral parties, he suggested I involve someone from work, preferably someone in a position of authority who could observe and document without being accused of bias. My HR director, Janet Ortiz, was perfect for this role, professional, unflappable, and smart enough to recognize a shitshow when she saw one. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would meet them at the airport when they returned from Hawaii, accompanied by my carefully selected witnesses. Not to confront them, not to accuse them of anything, but simply to welcome them home and hear their stories about their respective trips. Let them lie, Noah said. Let them elaborate. Let them dig their own graves with their own words, in front of people who will remember every detail. And then, when the lies become unsustainable, we present the evidence and watch them try to explain why they thought stealing from you was acceptable behavior. There was one more element to the plan, though, and this one was my contribution. I wanted Marcus Lee there. Marcus was our head of security at Meridian Logistics, a former cop who transitioned into corporate security after 20 years of dealing with actual criminals. He was quiet, observant, and had the kind of presence that made people think twice about whatever bullshit they were planning to pull. More importantly, He owed me a favor from the time I'd helped get his daughter an internship with one of our client companies. You want security there? Noah asked when I mentioned Marcus. I want someone there who understands how confrontations escalate and knows how to de-escalate them if necessary. I also want someone there who can't be intimidated or manipulated by emotional outbursts. Smart. Very smart. What about your friend Priya? The one you mentioned who knows about your marriage problems. Priya Patel had been my closest friend since business school, the kind of person who'd seen me at my worst and still answered her phone when I called. She was also a forensic accountant with a specialty in financial fraud, which made her uniquely qualified to understand exactly what my family had done to me and why it mattered. Priya stays in the background, I decided. She's there to observe and to keep me grounded, but she doesn't engage unless I specifically need her to. By the time I left Noah's office, we had a plan that was detailed, professional, and completely legal. No ambushes, no dramatic confrontations, no emotional outbursts that could be used against me later. Just a carefully orchestrated moment of truth where four people who thought they were smarter than me would discover that intelligence isn't the same thing as wisdom, and wisdom isn't the same thing as character. I called Paula Kim at American Airlines first. She remembered our conversation from Thursday night and was genuinely concerned about the security implications of unauthorized account access. Mr. Carter, I've been thinking about your situation, she said. The more I review the booking details, the more problematic this looks from a fraud prevention perspective. Would it be helpful if I was present when the passengers attempt to check in for their return flight? Actually, Paula, they're returning tomorrow. Would it be possible for you to meet them at arrival instead? I'd like to have an official airline representative present when I ask them about their trip. I can do that. I'll bring the account documentation and a colleague from our fraud prevention team. This is exactly the kind of case we use for training purposes, family members using accounts without authorization. Reverend Avery was my next call, and he was surprisingly receptive to the idea of witnessing what he diplomatically called a family reconciliation moment. Julian, he said, I've been in ministry for 30 years, and I've learned that the truth has a way of revealing itself when people are given the space to speak freely. If your family has something to explain about their recent activities, I'd be honored to provide pastoral support during that conversation. Janet Ortiz was the easiest sell of all. As HR director, she dealt with workplace drama on a weekly basis and had developed a professional appreciation for well-documented conflicts. Julian, you've been distracted at work for weeks, and now I understand why. If you need a witness for what sounds like a significant personal situation, I'm happy to help. Just promise me you're not planning anything that could reflect poorly on the company. Janet, I'm planning something that will reflect poorly on people who deserve it. The company has nothing to worry about. Marcus agreed without even asking for details. You need backup for something? You've got it. What time and where? By Friday evening, I had assembled what Noah called the most professional welcome committee in Connecticut legal history. 5 people who would observe, document, and witness whatever story my family tried to tell about their magical mystery tour to Hawaii. The only question left was whether they'd try to lie their way out of it, or if they'd surprise me with something resembling honesty. Given their track record, I wasn't betting on honesty. There's something deeply satisfying about packing a single backpack when you're used to managing other people's baggage, literal and metaphorical. Saturday morning, while my family was presumably enjoying their final day of tropical paradise funded by my decades of airline loyalty, I stood in my walk-in closet and realized I'd been carrying dead weight for a lot longer than just the past week. The closet was a monument to our marriage, or at least to the version of our marriage that existed for public consumption. His and her sections, perfectly organized, color-coordinated, with enough designer clothing to stock a small boutique. Lydia's side took up about 70% of the space, which had always seemed reasonable since women's fashion required more variety than men's business casual. Now it looked like evidence of a financial relationship where one person did all the earning and the other did all the spending. I pulled out my old hiking backpack, the one I'd used in college before I knew that adults were supposed to own matching luggage sets and worry about thread counts and whether their shoes conveyed the right message about their socioeconomic status. It felt good in my hands, solid, practical, designed for people who actually went places instead of just posting pictures of places on Instagram. Into the backpack went 3 days' worth of clothes, basic toiletries, my laptop, and the folder containing every piece of evidence Noah and I had compiled. Everything else, the Brooks Brothers suits, the Italian leather shoes, the expensive watches that marked anniversaries and promotions, could stay right where it was. Physical reminders of a life I was apparently too stupid to realize I'd been living alone. But first, I had some redecorating to do. The hallway leading from our front door to the living room was lined with family photos, a carefully curated gallery of our allegedly happy life together. Wedding pictures where we both looked young and optimistic and completely fucking clueless. Anniversary dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford but paid for anyway. Holiday gatherings where everyone smiled like they meant it. Vacation photos from trips that I planned, booked, and financed while other people collected memories and Instagram content. I started with our anniversary photo from last year, the Amalfi Coast trip that had cost me $15,000 and 3 weeks of vacation time. We're sitting at some overpriced restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean, both of us tan and relaxed, and playing the part of successful American tourists who definitely belonged in places that charged €50 for pasta. Lydia's wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and I'm wearing the kind of forced smile that comes from spending your entire vacation worried about credit card bills. I took that photo down first, studying our faces for signs of the deception that was apparently already in motion. Had she been planning this Hawaiian adventure even then? Had she been sitting across from me at that overpriced Italian restaurant, calculating how much of my money she could steal without me noticing? The photo went face down into my desk drawer, right next to the airline documentation and screenshots of Brielle's secret Instagram account. Evidence for the prosecution, Your Honor. Exhibit A. The defendant pretending to love the plaintiff while actively planning to rob him blind. Next came the family Christmas photo from 3 years ago, back when I still believed that Harold and Miriam Carter were the kind of parents who raised their children to value honesty and loyalty. We're all wearing matching red sweaters, because apparently my mother thought we were starring in some kind of holiday greeting card commercial, and everyone's laughing at something Aaron said. Probably a joke about how naive I was, though I'd thought it was just brotherly teasing at the time. Face down into the drawer. Then the photo from Harold's 70th birthday party, where I'd spent $3,000 on a surprise celebration at the country club and listened to speech after speech about the importance of family and tradition and taking care of the people you love. My father's wearing the same signet ring I'd spotted in Brielle's Hawaiian boomerang, and he's got his arm around me like I'm his pride and joy instead of his personal ATM. Face down into the drawer. By the time I was finished, the hallway looked like a crime scene where someone had systematically executed every happy memory in the house. Blank spots on the wall where our life used to hang. Nail holes that looked like bullet wounds. The ghostly outlines of frames marking the places where I used to believe I belonged. The living room got the same treatment. Wedding photos, vacation pictures, candid shots of us looking domestic and content. All of it disappeared into boxes or drawers or the growing pile of evidence that would probably end up in divorce court. What remained were the neutral pieces, artwork we'd bought together, furniture that didn't tell stories, the kind of impersonal decor you'd find in a hotel room or a staged house listing. It looked empty. It looked honest. It looked like what our marriage had probably always been underneath all the performance art and carefully curated social media content. The smart lock on the front door was the last thing I changed, scrolling through the app on my phone to delete Lydia's access code and set up new notifications. From now on, every time someone entered or left the house, I'd get a ping on my phone with a timestamp and a photo. No more surprise visits. No more convenient excuses. No more pretending that shared spaces meant shared trust. I also installed new security cameras at every entrance, discreet little devices that could record both